What's going on YouTube? My name is Eric Sun and I'm a photographer based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And this video is a continuation in my mini video series about lenses, the lenses that I use, what I use them for, and I'm breaking up each lens to having its own video because I want to be able to go a little bit more in depth with each lens to kind of tell you more information and help you become a more informed buyer if you were thinking about buying any of these lenses, so that you know what you're getting. Because lenses are not cheap, but if you get the right lens for the job, then the investment is definitely worth it. And so if you want to check out the other videos that I've shot talking about the other lenses that I've used, check out my channel. But without further ado, let's talk about this one. So the lens that we're going to talk about today is the Sigma Art Lens 85mm 1.4 prime lens. And this lens is, I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but this is a beast of a lens. And this lens is huge. This lens is huge, it's very heavy, but it's also built extremely well. I mean, you can just tell just by the grip of this lens that the grip is about like half the size of the lens itself, but it feels really nice. It rotates really smooth to determine the focal range that you want to focus on. And the glass itself, I mean, just look at that. That thing is ginormous. I mean, anybody would be intimidated standing in front of this lens. But I love this lens because I use this mostly for portraits and for events. And I use it for events because it goes down to 1.4 and it's an 85, so the focal range gets me a little bit closer than the other lenses that I would use, but also because most of the venues that I shoot, they dim the lights to create the mood, and so there's not much light to use. So going down to 1.4 allows me to capture and properly expose my images without having to bump up my ISO too high. But I use this mostly for portraits because I just love the look of the 85mm. And prime lenses are a little bit different. I mean, if you watch my other videos, you know that I'm a huge fan and advocate for zoom lenses because just of the versatility that you can have just from one lens and the different looks you can get. But with the prime lens, there are benefits to using a prime lens to where you can't zoom in and out. The only way for you to get different shots and to get different, I guess, distances to your subject without zooming in is by actually moving yourself in the camera. And for me personally, I like that. I really like that during a shoot because it makes me think differently about the shoot itself and how I capture the images. So it kind of switches things up, spices things up, and I feel like it's also beneficial for the client too, as when I'm switching lenses, when I switch up the mood of the shoot, like we kind of feed off of each other. So we're able to create different things and create different moods than if I just stuck with one lens. Because I feel like with zoom lenses, for me personally at least, with zoom lenses, I kind of stay stationary more just because I have the versatility of zooming in and out. Whereas with prime lenses, when I have it on, in my mind I know it's like, okay, I can't zoom in and out, so whatever I see is what I'm getting and I can't change that unless I change my position. And so because that makes me think differently about the shoot, for me to get a different angle, I have to actually move my whole body and the camera to get that different angle. And I feel like I'm switching that up, that switches up how the model or the subject is kind of interacting with me during the shoot to get the photos that we're both looking for. So I really love that aspect about prime lenses, and this one in particular because 85mm is a very popular portrait focal length, I should say, that switching that up and kind of spicing up the shoot itself just feels good as a creative. And I feel like a lot of how we're feeling and a lot of how we create is dictated upon what we use, but also how we're doing ourselves. Because sometimes, honestly, if the shoot goes, let's say there's like a 2-hour long shoot, client books me out for 2 hours, I got the 24-70 on. 24-70 is by far my most favorite lens, but after a while I'm like, you know what, I kind of want to switch things up. This is feeling a little stale. Let me switch out, and I'll bring out the 85mm to kind of switch things up. I mean, granted, I am a lot further away from my subject if I wanted to get full body shots or just in general because it is 85, but the looks and the interactions and just what this lens can do, I think it's phenomenal. And with this lens, I mean, you can tell that this lens has an auto and manual focus right here to it, and for all Sigma lenses that I own, there's a auto and manual focus, and I really like that too. Mostly if I do happen to want to use this for any video work, having that option I think is great. And because the grip right here is so smooth that it's pretty easy for me to be pretty precise with this. There is a little bit of resistance, so just keep that in mind. It's not as smooth as any cinema lenses, I would say, but it is fairly smooth for me to be able to change focus depending on, you know, the kind of look that I'm trying to get in video. So this lens, I would definitely recommend it, but I would not recommend it to everybody. And what I mean by that is that because the 85mm is such a specific focal range, if you don't know what you're going to be using this lens for, or you don't know how this lens will help you, then I just wouldn't recommend this lens. I got this lens in particular because out of all the research I did about the 85mm, I loved how it looked, I loved what it could do, and I loved the fact that it can jump all the way down to 1.4 in the aperture. So for most zoom lenses, for all the zoom lenses that I own, they go all the way down, the aperture goes down to 2.8, but for prime lenses they can go down even further. They can go down to 1.4 like this lens, or even 1.2, and some can go even lower. And so having that very narrow depth of field allows the background to be really blurred, allows just a lot of creativity with the shoots that you're using this lens for. So if you don't know what you're going to be using this lens for, I would not recommend you getting it. I would say that about probably every prime lens out there, that if you don't know what you're going to be getting, like a 50mm for, or a 35mm for, or 85 or anything like that, if you don't know what you're going to be using it for, I would not recommend you buying it, because this lens is like $1,200. If you're not going to be using it properly, or using it and you don't see much benefit, you're going to just be dropping $1,200 and not being happy with your purchase. I'd rather you use that $1,200 and buy something else that makes more sense for the type of photography that you shoot and the type of looks that you're trying to get. The downfalls of this lens, I would say, is probably just that it's really heavy. It's really heavy, and because the glass itself is so big, it does catch dust, it does catch like my dog's hair in it, and you just gotta clean it out a little bit more often, obviously, than the others. But other than that, I mean, this lens, I don't really have any complaints with it. I mean, the performance is great. Sigma lenses, in my experience, have been super reliable. I've never been disappointed with the Sigma lens. I've never been disappointed with how they're built. Even if there's a little bit of rain, I've shot this with a little bit of rain, still works perfectly fine. And for prime lenses, unlike zoom lenses, you don't really have an extra piece in there that I guess allows you to zoom in and out. What you see is kind of what you get, and so I think that there's less pieces in these lenses so that they don't break as often and they're more durable. Whereas my 24-70, I came across an error message because of the zooming factor of it, and I had to get to send it in to repair, and it was a lot of money. So yeah, that's pretty much it with this lens. I mean, let me know what's your thoughts. Let me know if you use this lens or if you think about buying this lens. Please let me know if you have any questions about this lens at all. I'm more than happy to share anything and everything that I know about this lens and my experience in using it. But as always, thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out my other videos about the other lenses, you can do that on my channel. But please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Thanks so much, guys. Peace.